Welcome, everybody. I'm joined by friend of the channel, Kyle Mullins, and a new face, Al. Thanks so much for joining us, Al. We're here to do a follow-up on our Lorcana video. I think we kind of I had some harsh takes with Andy on Lorcana, so we thought, let's do something constructive. So we wanted to put together a list of the 5 things that we think need to improve with Lorcana for the general health of the game. So these are sort of things that are good for players, good for collectors, good for parents that are about to lose their damn minds when Christmas comes up and a booster box is $650 or something. So I think this is a list we kind of put together, and we'll riff on each point, kind of talk about it a little bit more. But I think on the top of everybody's mind is distribution and print run. Right now, nobody can get it. I was just looking at TCG Player and eBay. You're looking at $400 for a booster box, which is an MSRP of $139 or something. So you're looking at literally a 3x increase there. And I think it's a huge problem with distribution, and almost distribution and print run are 2 separate points as well. Like, who's getting it, what game stores are getting it, and then the print run's the second point. But Kyle, Al, I would love to hear your thoughts on the sort of distribution print run. I understand you guys have actually played. I have not successfully played yet, so I'm curious to hear how you guys have found. How'd you get your cards?
Yeah, I'm gonna let Al start because he knows the most about this, so that's why I brought him here.
So I would say that I'm been very fortunate, which I think shows some of the challenges with this, which is that I happen to live near a game shop that was very high on their list. That is the sort of center of organized play for the region. So they got a pretty good distribution of product. They chose to sell it at a lower price for folks who had actually played the game with them and showed up to their deck events and things like that. So I ended up being able to buy a booster box for only $200, which is, only $50 above MSRP, which is crazy to say. But I think the fact that my experience was good, I also had gone to another store previously. They had no product. They had no expectation of when they were going to get product. So I think I was very fortunate to live near a place that got it. But if you just live in a place and you have one game store, you may not have had any option. And I think that's part of the challenge with the distribution. I mean, I think it was very smart that they decided to start with the local game stores. But I think with the size of the print run, they probably should have just passed on the Walmarts and the Targets of the world altogether and just dumped that product into the local game shops.
I agree, because I think the other thing about stores charging over MSRP is I think local game stores are sort of beloved in their communities, and then you have the amount of online mobs I've seen being formed that their local game store is charging $220 and it's $80 over, and then people arguing back and forth whether this is like a bad business practice. It just feels like it's not good for stores that already run on pretty small margins. And as the secondary market has crept up on these products, you're also putting gamers in an awkward spot where you get a box for $200, and then do you open it, or actually man, you can flip this for $200 more? It puts you in a kind of a hairy situation, especially if maybe you were kind of hesitant on playing the game and you got a box and you open it and it's actually worth twice as much. Should I not open it? And that just doesn't encourage people to play or interact with the cards or talk about the cards. It encourages it to sit in closets, right? Which is not good for the health of the game.
Oh, and there are definitely going to be heavy hitters who are going to buy up, cases and throw them in a, safety, like a box or some big large room, right? And we're not going to see it for 20 years because they're like, well, this is going to be worth a fortune later. And frankly, I don't know. I mean, if they end up doing, reprints later in the exact same format without separating that this is a first print run and this is a second print run, i.e. white borders, or distinguishing them as an unlimited version or something, then, they could be worth a lot more. The question comes down to, what is Ravensburger ultimately at the CEO board at the table where they're we don't have the ability to print as much as we should, like Pokemon or Wizards of the Coast, because we're Ravensburger, we make puzzles. Is this just like a cash grab and we're always going to sell out of our product every time we launch it, which, doesn't necessarily look bad, but they have zero.
I disagree. I think categorically it is bad for the long-term health of a product. If you're looking at the 5 to 7 years to have this stuff sit in vaults. That is not.
Oh, absolutely.
That is not something that's going to be around for 5 years.
But again, what was the board thinking when they did this, right? Is this for the 14 to, 11 to 12, 13, 14-year-old? Or is this for the 30, 40-year-old man who has excess money to kill and they're looking to make a heavy profit later?
I would also say, too, that I am not sold on this being sealed product that's going to drastically appreciate. And the primary reason for that is because Disney has gone basically all in on not using plastic. So the boxes are cardboard. They are not hard sealed. It's very easy to get in and take packs out and weigh them to replace them with something else. So even stores like Best Buy, where you could theoretically buy a booster box, you can't buy them in stores because they're so easy to tamper with. And so I think if you're holding this expecting that somebody 20 years from now is going to want to buy it, I would not be buying that knowing how easy it is to tamper with.
So let's move on to our second point here, because I want to keep things running a little bit. So distribution print run, it's just got to be figured out. I know it's not going to be figured out by Christmas, which is going to be heartbreaking to watch these boxes soar as parents make a decision between like a car payment and a booster box for their kid that demands it. Like, this is stuff that's going to be happening, right? And like, this is Tickle Me Elmo all over again. And let's just say Tickle Me Elmo is not worth the same amount it was then. But anyway, so moving on to the second point, which is the secondary market. I said this before, but the secondary market of any CCG is the ugliest part of the game. It is where scalpers have, it's where people get ripped off, it's where packs get weighed. It's all these practices that everybody thinks are kind of scummy, but they deal with because it's a necessity. And you have a brand new generation of gamers, whether it's 10, 12-year-olds or people that just love Disney, like, in their 40s coming in, and they're being exposed needlessly to the worst part of these hobbies, which are people basically buying and selling goods, which I understand is a human practice, but I think the way it's done in CCGs is pretty scummy. I think everyone kind of agrees there. So the secondary market, I don't know, have great ideas of how to fix it, but I think when you have a parent that wants to buy this product and they look on eBay and it's $500, they're just going to look the other way and say, okay, let's go back to Pokemon.
Well, yeah, because Pokemon is so available. I could walk into Walmart, Target right now, and there's plenty of Pokemon product available there at any time. And frankly, if you want certain singles or rares and they're not graded, you can get a lot of them for like $1, $2, $3. I mean, there's just so much product printed, and the kids are happy. The kid doesn't care whether it's a $2 rare or a $100 rare. They're like, that looks so cool. Or like, this is my favorite, it's like, that's all that makes them happy. So as a parent, I'm like, great, that checks a box, like, so why would they spend all this crazy money or even start to dive down there? They wouldn't even start.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I'm priced out. Like, like we didn't even start, like, Jesus.
Al, one of the things we were talking about a little earlier before the video is, the secondary market for singles has become so expensive that even to get a meta deck, you're looking at $500 to $1,000. And while that's kind of commonplace for Magic, the audience for Magic is not 12-year-olds. And I just think a reasonable parent isn't going to allow their kid to bring their $750 Elsa deck to school and have the classic, like, my cards were stolen from my book bag thing happen. It's just not good to have singles be at this price to create competitive decks.
I agree. And I think that while it's challenging, I think there are things that like local game stores that are hosting these events can do to help with this. Number one, I think having sort of a robust collection of singles for sale is certainly a lot better than having to navigate the secondary markets. I've seen folks at these events who are basically doing card pooling, where, they can build different types of decks from a common pool of cards. I think it would be great if game shops had sort of collections of lower value commons and uncommons to help people fill out their decks like on a loan basis and can give them back at the end of an event. So I think there are creative things stores can do to help make this easier for players and like a more robust community. But I agree. I mean, the secondary market, you have the confluence of people who are Disney fanatics as collectors, people who are just speculating on this because it's a new thing, and people who genuinely want to and people who genuinely want to play the game. And with the scarcity of the product, I mean, it's even for people who are used to spending a lot of money on things, like, they're not going to chase a lot of things here.
Yeah, I agree. And I do think that people will just move on, right? And that's one of the things, like, Ravensburg might sell out of set 1 and 2, but by set 3, they finally get print run figured out. It's everywhere, but people have collectively just moved on because they couldn't get anything for long enough. So I think this is a good transition to our third point, which is organized and local play. I think it's fledgling, it's nascent right now, but it needs to be figured out. And whether that's also adding in some sort of pro tour so you can have a meta develop on a sort of 30,000 foot, like a larger stage. But I think right now, no one has the cards, so no one's playing the game, which means there's not much local play happening. And it feels a bit like a death spiral where it's just people selling stuff for 25 times what it should be, perhaps. And like, I see commons for like $3. I'm like, this is insane. It's like, this is there's 6 of these in the back.
I think
So
that will evolve.
I haven't experienced a local play scene, so I'd be curious to hear from you guys.
I would imagine that would evolve, though. I mean, yes, it's expensive and stuff, but prices will come down. Like this is, I don't, at least for like the general commons, and as cards get used, and if kids somehow do manage to get their hands on it, they're probably not going to keep them in good quality. And like if they're doing things like at card stores, like I was saying, like pooling cards or having decks available for people to come to a tournament and play without actually bringing their own cards, that's like a game changer. That does make it like accessible and welcome.
Well, I understand that they wanted to do the sort of Lorcana league, and that the participation in the league was quite stringent for local game stores to qualify. And I think things like that create barriers to entry where you're only going to have the biggest and best stores in a region that are going to have local play scenes, and people have to drive 45 minutes to an hour to even play the game. And at the end of the day, like Tuesday after work, I don't want to drive an hour to like Northern Virginia to play a game. Like, I'm like, no, I'm just going to pass. So I think there's decisions that were made to go to only the best stores, basically best local game stores with the sort of league presence. And I think that, this can be fixed. I want this to be a video that, this is constructive criticism. These are all fixable things, but long-term, people are going to drive an hour to play a game.
It'll probably be less Ravensburger driven and more like, fans of the game who are going to start, this from the ground up. It would be my best guess, and then eventually, officially it'll catch up.
But if you want to play like a tournament, have prize support, and you want to get the fancy promos that Ravensburger gives to like, that's part of the fun of this stuff is like you get, they distribute promos for first place winner at local tournaments. Like that's cool stuff for players and collectors, right?
Yeah. Well, I will say our local game shop is doing that. So I know the stores that were chosen were given sort of a set of 3 different promo cards that they could choose to give out in a number of different ways. They were given sort of some broad guidance. There were also some pins and things, and stores are supposed to come up with their own method of distributing those. It's really interesting because I think on the one hand, like having played locally, there's a lot of interest in the game itself, not just the collecting. Like I think people react really well to the game, and there's a lot of people who've been playing Magic or Pokemon for a long time who just find the game really refreshing and frankly way more fun to play. So I think that's really positive. And even to the point about $3 commons, the reason those commons are $3 is because people are actually playing them. I think if you look at the distribution of the price for the non-like enchanted rares, it really is the cards that are expensive really are the ones that are really important to building specific decks, which suggests to me that there are a lot of people who really want the cards to play with, which I think is all really positive. But I think the point is that the lack of product has made it very difficult to distribute league play evenly, and it's made it very difficult for people to actually build the decks they want, which in turn also makes it difficult to build sort of like structured league play that feels like it's actually contributing to something. I think that we'll eventually get there. I'm hopeful that over the next year they'll also be rolling out things like organized tournaments and sort of some type of championship structure. But so my take, having played it, is that there's a lot of positive energy around it, but it's new and it still definitely has a lot of room to improve.
Yeah, I think this is a good transition to our 4th point here, which is there needs to be a better distribution of power cards. So, with many games, obviously the more rare cards typically are more powerful, but I think that Lorcana might overshot this a little bit, where to build any sort of competitive deck, you're looking at, very expensive cards. Al, do you kind of want to speak to this? I think I've played 0 times. You're in a fest.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you described it exactly right. They clearly there are some commons and uncommons that are very good, but I think they very clearly made a decision to weight the power of the cards according to their rarity. And I think that makes it very challenging with the limited amount of product out. Something that I think Pokemon has done very well is they'll take the same text of a card and they'll put different images on it and different qualities of foils and different rarities. And so if you're a collector, there are options for you, but if you just want to play the game, there's usually an affordable version of a card. I think the fact that you have non-foil, the cheapest version of a card you can possibly play, going for $65 each, just makes that style of play completely unplayable, in my opinion.
Yeah, the pay to play model is awful. I really think they need to steer away from that because, one, people really hate that. Because then they see like winning decks and they're like, oh, well, this guy spent way more money on it. Like you should be able to competitively play with, a relatively inexpensive deck. And if you wanted to have these alternate image or, variety foils or something, cool, good for you. That's a flex, right? Like you can do that, but it really should be completely separated from gameplay. So if they do play, like that's a big red flag.
I think there's even an evolution of this where you can add another product line in some sort of collector booster, right? Like if you want to have the collector booster, which is going to have all the fancy stuff, create the correct collector booster line, which Magic has done, which is an absolute cash cow for as well. So I think there's plenty of ways to sort of fix this down the road where there's different iterations, alternative images, borderless, foils.
They can do both. That's the thing. Like they can do both effectively. They can start having like numbered varieties or like really rare stuff.
Yeah.
Like, cool. But like you don't have to be able to, pay $60 for a variety of a card when, that's the only one, that's the best one. So I got to pay the max, they don't need to do that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's interesting if you compare to Pokemon, look at the distribution of a pack. If you buy Pokemon packs in a booster box, you're paying $3 a pack, whereas Lorcana $6 a pack. In a Pokemon pack, you're going to get 3 foils, at least one of which is going to be rare or better. In Lorcana, you're getting 2 rares guaranteed and 1 foil of any level of rarity guaranteed.
Could be common or uncommon.
Right, and it's usually a common or an uncommon. So you're paying $6 and you're only guaranteed to get 2 rares. And so when you want to build a deck that requires 4 of a legendary card, the amount of packs you would have to open to be able to get that is just an insane number. And you're paying twice what a pack would cost for Pokemon. So
you might not even get that in like a 4-pack case.
Exactly. So I think if you look at the intersection of what packs cost, how many of each type of rarity you get in a pack, and how the power is distributed across the different levels of rarity, you really run into this roadblock where there are just not enough of the cards that people really want to play to be able to play the game at a high level.
Well, they also have, on a side note with like Pokemon, you also have those boxes that you can buy where they call out like a special card and like, this is the good card in this, deck building box. And they're inexpensive boxes, but you're getting this specific good card. So if you want to build a deck around that theme, you can do that because it's called out, here's your rare, here's your cool one. Like I think Lorcana could definitely, do that.
I think that's a great thing that they could do, especially as the meta sort of solidifies, to be able to put out decks of different types of things that, have 4 promo Rapunzels and it only costs you $25 as opposed to having to pay $250.
Exactly.
I think Pokemon has done that really well too, in terms of creating promo versions of cards that are hard to find in packs.
So I think this is a good transition to our last point here, which, talking about accessibility of the game and sort of the cost of rares and cost of the meta, you need to have an officially sanctioned online play option. Magic Arena has twice as many players on every day playing games. Twice as many games are played on Magic Arena versus Magic in person every single day, right? This is a tremendously popular platform that's successful. It's also a way of teaching the game. There's no reason that Lorcana cannot have an officially sanctioned version. I know there's Pixelborn or whatever, which is kind of fan driven, which also could be shut down by any minute if Ravensburger decides or Disney decides, hey, this is an IP violation, guys. So you got to figure this out. Go pay a developer to get you an app in the next month, because if I can't get this in stores, I'm like, oh, maybe I'll play it on my phone, and it has to also be available on mobile. I'm sorry, it just does. And Hearthstone, Gwent, Magic Arena, there's so many of these e-card games, and Lorcana can absolutely be there and should be there to teach people how to play, to give that accessibility. And frankly, you can also easily add in microtransactions, right?
I would imagine, to make it really user-friendly, if they're trying to really target an audience that's a little bit younger than an adult, though, they're going to have to, the user experience is going to have to be, top-notch. It's probably going to require a lot of testing, a lot of money to put this forth, on top of the fact that they're going to be dropping new product, quarterly. That's a lot of new cards they got to figure out into the algorithm.
The thing is, right now, you're at advantage. You only have 200 cards, right? You have, 206 cards in the first set or something? It's
for now, right? But as they add it, the mechanics change, and cards are going to be doing weird things. They got to build that in.
Sure, I'm just saying, Magic Arena, you literally have a 20,000 card pool, and it's clunky, right? And it hasn't always been perfect, but it's immensely popular, right? Tens of millions of downloads, right? And I just think you could do this. It doesn't have to be perfect,
Yeah.
but I think it's a way of giving people a
Chance to
flavor
play
of
it.
the game.
I also think this would be a different conversation if this was like an upstart company that was trying to release their own thing.
Yes.
Like this is Disney.
Yes.
Disney
Yes.
can figure this out. Disney's core competency.
They
is
own
making
Pixar, guys. Like you figure
Like-
something out. Like grab some designers over there.
Like I never in my lifetime thought that I would want to spend money on something that Disney created and not be able to. Like that just blows my mind.
That is like fundamentally a really good point. That's like a thesis statement right there. So I think just a couple final thoughts here. The last video I did, I had a couple people comment that the distribution is just a North American problem, and that actually globally it's going pretty well. I was curious if you guys have any thoughts on that. I mean, my remark to that is, North America's over half the market, so you should have played better.
Are they printing them in English around the world?
I mean, I think like you can get product in the UK, like for example.
Yeah.
I think there's also a French and Italian printing of this, I believe, and a couple of other languages.
As far as I was aware, there was only an English printing, but I could definitely be wrong.
Maybe I'm mistaken on other languages.
Yeah, because there's that. Plus, did they actually physically make it in Europe to distribute in Europe? In which case, they, German efficiency. Am I right? Like,
yeah, I think like I have a German friend that's like, oh yeah, you can get like it's still hard to find, but it's not 400 euros for a booster box, right? It's cheaper in Germany because I think they just allocated it differently. So I thought that was an interesting comment that someone made, and then I kind of wanted to close with a comment that Kyle made, and maybe I'll pose it to both of you, which is, who is the target audience for this game? Because I don't know either, because they're trying to sort of have their cake and eat it too. It's like, this is a kid's game. It's simpler than Magic. It's there's less interactiveness with your opponents, which makes it less maybe bad gameplay experiences. But then again, we're going to add in like tons of collecting level. We're going to market this in a way where like it's trying to be a Magic killer a little bit, which is inherently like an adult audience. So I'm just curious, who do you guys think the target audience is here?
So my experience actually playing it with people is that it's successfully targeting a lot of different audiences. So I played last night. There was a 7-year-old there. There were a bunch of people who were playing this instead of Magic. There were a few people who were like, I love Disney and I just wanted to play my first Disney cards, my favorite Disney cards. And I came at this by way of tabletop games, never having played one of these before, and thought it reminded me enough of a tabletop game that it seemed really fun. So at least from that demographic alone, there were multiple kids there from high school. So it was a really, really diverse group. There were, I've heard that Magic is often very male. This was, still more male than female, but a lot more balanced, I think, than a lot of other things. So I think from that perspective, it actually does appeal to a lot of people. And as a parent of a 5-year-old, one of the things that I do appreciate about this is I think it is more accessible to younger kids than obviously Magic, but even Pokemon. The numbers are smaller. There's less math involved. There's less reading involved in the cards. There's fewer complex interactions with your opponent, which makes it easier for them to just sort of learn what they need to do and play it. So I think from that perspective, the game design actually is really well suited to a younger audience, which I think is a positive thing. So I actually think from a game design perspective, they've done a good job of appealing to a lot of different folks. I just think they need to figure out the market side of it.
Yep. Kyle, what do you think?
I agree. I mean, the website is very vague and simple. It does feel like a very family approached game. Like there's no reason why father son could play this, or mom or daughter or whatever, like in theory. But again, like because of the price points, like why would we as a family play this game when we can play another game for way less and still have fun? So I'm not saying like, you're riding the hype train because everyone's talking about it and it's Disney, of course. But at the end of the day, like, and you've seen this with other board games too, and other big games, like it's, a fortune just to buy the box. And it's like, like if we haven't even really played that much of it, like, why would I be incentivized to spend that much,
Yeah, I agree with that. So I guess we'll close with sort of a final thought here is I think that the CCG market right now is undergoing a transition. Magic is really been abusive to players recently with really heavy print runs and a lot of money grabs. So it feels like there is this opening for Lorcana to come in and take some of that market share, as well as bring in new players due to the sort of Disney IP and sort of the younger audience. And I want them to succeed, which is why we made this list. And we want to fix the distribution problems. We want to fix the secondary market, organized play, distribution of rares, online play. This is all stuff that's fixable. This is not a broken game. You're only a month away or out of the release of local game stores. I guess my critique there is, but you guys knew this was coming since D23. Like D23 promos going for $4,000 a piece told you there was going to be demand back in. Like that was, I mean, I remember in October I made a video. I'm like, D20, there's all 6 of them are $1,800. That's so much money. And now that would have been like the best investment you could have made, like if you bought all 6 of them for $1,800.
Well, it'll be telling to see as they release future promos how they address that.
Right.
Because you cannot like avoid that chaos, right? You could not have missed that. Like
there's good hype, and then there's hold on, I'm sorry, you want me to trade in my car for some 6 pieces of cardboard? And like that's maybe not good hype, right? That's bad hype. So anyways, that's my final thoughts. Any final thoughts from you guys?
It has potential. I think I would love to interview 2 groups of people, right? I mean, it'd be weird, but go into like a middle school and just like ask a whole bunch of kids, like, Lorcana, what are your thoughts? Leave it at that. Pokemon, what are your thoughts? Like, what are they going to get hyped up for? And then secondly, I would love to hear from anybody higher up at Ravensburger, just communicate something as to what it is they're trying to do, or, hey guys, sorry, we didn't realize the explosion of popularity, or, oh, this is exactly what we wanted, we're so high, like something, right? So I'd love to hear from that corporate side and from just my idea of the general audience.
Yeah, people are interested, but people don't remain interested forever. Al, any final thoughts from you?
No, I think that's all fair. I mean, I think it's a really fun game, and I think they have the opportunity to fix all these things. So hopefully they do.
Great. Well, thanks so much for coming in, guys. And Al, welcome to the show. We'll hope to have you on again, and we'll see everybody next time.